The movie begins with a tough man at a table, with 3 shot glasses in front of him, one empty, one with 1 bullet, and the last with 2. He names soldiers he fought with who died, counting down. When he reaches the last name, he drinks the whiskey from the glass with 2 bullets, loads the bullets into his revolver, and plays Russian roulette. He pulls the trigger, click, no bullet. Later, Chapman goes to a liquor store and is confronted by 2 armed robbers. Calmly, he steps in front of them, telling them not to aim for the stomach. He overpowers them quickly, but the memory of war hits him hard. That night, he struggles with flashbacks, trying to drown them out with intense training, but it does not help. In frustration, he punches the wall until his knuckles bleed. The next morning, hungover, he's awakened by loud knocking. It's his sister, Cindy, whom he forgot to pick up from the airport. She's visiting for a few days before returning to Brazil, where she has been working in dangerous neighborhoods through charity. Chapman does not argue with Cindy, but before she leaves, she checks his medicine and finds he swapped it for breath mints. Disappointed, she leaves. Later, 2 Brazilian officers, Catarina and Paulo, find Cindy badly injured on a beach. The attack makes the news, reaching the U.S. Embassy, and Chapman immediately flies to Rio. Meanwhile, detectives Santo and Baroro are chasing smugglers in the favelas when Catarina and Paulo arrive, following a lead on Cindy's attacker. Catarina criticizes Santo for being too violent, but he responds by accusing her of being too soft on the locals, blaming her for the crime. Tensions rise, and a fight almost breaks out. Santo challenges the locals to a fight, and his partner Baroro defeats the strongest capoeira fighter. Santo mocks the locals, promising to return whenever he wants, as they glare at him with anger. Meanwhile, Chapman arrives in Brazil and is greeted by U.S. Ambassador Manny Ridley, a fellow war veteran and an old friend. Together, they go to the hospital where Chapman sees Cindy lying in a coma. She looks pale and lifeless. The sight brings back painful memories of war, dead bodies, bloody sand, and the silence after gunfire. Before Chapman can take it all in, Detective Santo walks in, saying the favela is in terrible shape. Manny introduces Santo as the lead detective on Cindy's case and asks Chapman to stay calm and let the police do their job. But Santo quickly makes his point. He tells Chapman the favelas are not for tourists. On the way to the crime scene, Chapman and Santo discuss their bleak views of the world. Santo says kids in the favelas often become criminals, while Chapman sees war everywhere. They both agree the world is harsh. At the favela, Chapman meets Catarina again. A loud noise startles him, and he instinctively grabs her gun, but it is just a truck backfiring. He calmly hands it back and asks for his sidearm. Santo warns Catarina to watch him closely. As they walk through the streets, Catarina explains that drug cartels now fund clinics and schools, forcing locals to protect criminals to keep their safety. For Catarina, being a cop here is dangerous. One wrong move could start a bloodbath. Back at the hospital, Cindy's condition suddenly gets worse. Chapman, who had been sitting with her, quickly rushes to call a nurse. But something feels wrong. A few minutes earlier, a woman pretending to be a doctor was in Cindy's room. Now, Cindy's life support machines are unplugged. Someone tried to finish what they started. Furious, Chapman demands that the police stay by Cindy's side 24/7. Then he heads straight into the favelas to find answers. He tracks down a street kid named Kuka, the same one he saw near the beach where Cindy was found. When Chapman notices the necklace around Kuka's neck, his anger rises. It belonged to Cindy. He grabs Kuka, demanding answers. Kuka and his friends charge at Chapman, but they are no match for a trained Marine. The fight ends in seconds. Desperate, Kuka pulls out a knife, but Chapman quickly disarms him and turns the knife back on the kid. The danger is real, but they cannot understand each other because of the language barrier. Just in time, Catarina shows up and stops the fight. She explains that Cindy had been working closely with Kuka's family. His sister Maria was also a victim. She disappeared without a trace. The necklace was not stolen. It was a gift, a symbol of friendship between Cindy and Maria. Realizing his mistake, Chapman relaxes a bit. Kuka hands over Cindy's notebook, but something's strange. Many pages have been torn out. Chapman flips through the notebook, confused. Chapman finds a contact, a photographer Cindy had recently worked with. Without wasting any time, he calls him and arranges to meet at a cafe. The photographer explains that Cindy had hired him to document the tough lives of children in the favelas. But there was more. Cindy had also been investigating the disappearances of girls who worked the streets at night. The photographer thinks this investigation put her in danger. Cindy had also asked him to secretly take photos of her meeting with an informant. According to him, she took all the photos and did not leave anything behind. Chapman thanks the photographer and gives him a hug, then secretly slips a flash drive into his pocket. As the photographer walks to his car, an explosion tears through the air. The car bursts into flames, killing him instantly and injuring several people nearby. The shock of it all sends Chapman into a spiral of war flashbacks. But in the chaos, something catches his eye. The same woman who tried to kill Cindy at the hospital. Without thinking, he runs after her. Just as he turns a corner, a black SUV screeches into view. Gunmen armed with automatic rifles start shooting. Chapman narrowly avoids the bullets, diving for cover. Nearby, a security guard lays dead an innocent victim of the attack. Chapman grabs the fallen guard's gun and shoots back, taking out some of the attackers and forcing the others to run away. Later, in Ridley's office, Chapman tells him about the ambush. He mentions the strange tattoos on the attackers' arms, thinking they might be members of the Japanese underworld. The woman he chased also looked unmistakably Eastern. They plug the flash drive into a computer, and among the photos, one stands out. Cindy had taken a picture of a man outside a nightclub. Ridley instantly recognizes the place and offers to drive Chapman there. "That's a local nightclub. I know where that is," Ridley says. Inside the club, Chapman keeps a low profile while tracking the man from the photo. He follows him into the restroom and does not waste time. Within seconds, he has the man pinned down, his documents ripped from his hands. The man cracks under pressure and gives up the address of a high-profile client who might be connected to Cindy's attack. The next day, Chapman and Ridley head to their new target, a fancy villa, a place for the rich and powerful. Meanwhile, across the city, Santo and his team get ready for a tough raid on drug dealers in the favelas. Santo coldly says there will be no mercy and orders his team to take down anyone in their way. Before the mission, he kneels and says a prayer, his way of making peace before the violence starts. Moments later, his team storms the area. There are no arrests, only bodies hitting the ground. At the villa, Chapman's arrival is noticed. A call is made to a woman upstairs. Her presence is reported to an elegant but cold-looking Asian woman who is counting stacks of cash. She barely reacts, telling the guards not to bother the boss, Hiramoto. Chapman is led out onto a balcony, where he spots a van pulling up. The doors open and young girls are led out. Among them is Maria, California's missing sister. Before he can act, a guard grabs him from behind and tries to strangle him. But Chapman is not easy to take down. He fights back, breaking free and knocking the guard out cold. He slips into the shadows and follows the traffickers, staying out of sight. The place is full of armed men, Japanese yakuza, just as he thought. Back in the favelas, the killing continues. One of Santo's men spots a group of yakuza in expensive suits, leading children toward a car. The officer tries to stop them, but Santo, always in control, praises him for his bravery before pulling out his gun and shooting him dead. The yakuza are free to go, and Santo calls his bosses. On the other end of the phone, a woman tells him that his payment will be ready at the port. Then she calls Hirimoto, her boss, to tell him there is a problem. The American is getting in the way, and it is time to get rid of him. Meanwhile, Lima, the man from the nightclub, stands before Hirimoto, awaiting his punishment. The mistake of letting his documents fall into Chapman's hands has cost him. One quick slice of a samurai sword later, Lima is dead. Meanwhile, Chapman moves deeper into enemy territory. It does not take long for Hirimoto's men to spot him. He fights 5 of them at once, using only his fists and a stolen briefcase. But before he can finish, Santo and Bororo step in with guns aimed at him. They demand the briefcase. Gunshots alert Katarina and her partner, who arrive just in time to stop whatever Santo was planning. To keep up appearances, the corrupt detective pretends to go along with it. He follows Chapman to the room where the kidnapped girls were kept, but it's empty. The victims have already been moved. Frustrated but not giving up, Chapman hands over the briefcase. The documents inside connect the Yakuza to human trafficking. Santo insists on taking the evidence into his custody. As Chapman turns to leave, it hits him. He never mentioned Lima's name. That means Santo already knew what was going on. Something clicks. Santo is involved. Chapman immediately tells Katarina to check on Cindy at the hospital while he follows Santo. Hidden inside Santo's car, Chapman watches as the detective drives to the port. Meanwhile, Katarina arrives just in time, seconds before a hired assassin can finish the job. The killer barely has time to react before Katarina takes them down. At the port, Chapman observes as Yakuza members lead the kidnapped children into a warehouse. He calls Ridley and reports everything, but ignores his warning not to act alone. Using his military skills, Chapman silently takes out guards and gains the upper hand. A shootout with Santo follows, and Chapman pins him with a forklift. Before finishing him off, Bororo blindsides him, launching a capoeira attack. Chapman fights back with power and precision, knocking out both Bororo and Santo. Hirimoto, the Yakuza boss, steps in and attacks with a katana, wounding Chapman. Santo lunges with a knife, but Chapman turns it on Bororo, stabbing him. He knocks Santo out and drives his chain into his chest. With only Hirimoto left, Chapman uses steel pipes to block sword attacks and nearly defeats him, but Hirimoto's hidden blade stabs Chapman in the stomach. Fueled by determination, Chapman defeats Hirimoto and gets a key from a dying Santo, revealing records of corrupt officials involved in the operation. Hirimoto tries one last move, but Chapman kills him. He leaves a gun beside Santo as a final mercy. Ridley and the authorities arrive, and Chapman frees the kidnapped children. Cindy survives but needs extensive care. Ridley offers to pay for it if Chapman works for him as an undercover agent. Chapman agrees, taking on the identity of his old Marine call sign, Falcon. Hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe to our channel for more great content. Thank you for watching.